because of the way that speech codes work, right? At first, it was like the really bad things, right? Like, I should not show up to work in blackface and start casually using the N-word, right? Let's say
Yeah.
that's a good rule for me to follow. But then it got to like, don't talk about Shakespeare. And because like they got that taste of power of like controlling speech and thought, and that's addictive, and they just like went further and further and further with it. One of the things that happened at CSU was the speech guide came out. And the speech guide said, don't say America. The word America and American is offensive. And the president of CSU had to go on this like a national apology tour and promise the legislature and promise everybody that that's not a real thing. It was a suggestion. And then Andrew Doyle on Twitter has also like captured a lot of these like things too, like where like, the most ridiculous things ever became racist and sexist. Because, you know, it wasn't about things being actually racist or sexist. It was about like, hey, no, we want control over people's thoughts. Because if your goal is to get to the revolution, if you can control people's thoughts and minds, you can sort of, you know, lead them into becoming, you know, these like conformed robots, and then they'll do what you want them to do to get your revolution. But the problem was they pissed so many people off along the way that they provided this whole backlash. Like the best tweet I saw after Trump won, it was a Hispanic guy, and he goes, "Call us Latinx one more time, motherfuckers. I dare you."
I think my favorite tweet that I saw after the election was a progressive guy who said, "How in the world did we lose the Latinx vote?" It's like, I want to frame this. I want to print this out and frame it. You know, but there was all of my grad school textbooks are at least in some way rooted in critical race theory. And it's interesting because sometimes they're contradictory, where I had one textbook that said saying that there are different races is a microaggression because we're all one race, the human race.
Yeah.
And a different textbook said, if you say that we're all one race, the human race, that's a microaggression. So it's kind of like a dealer's choice of if I want to call you a racist or not.
Yeah. No, I mean, and like James Lindsay had a great thing about this too. And I don't always agree with him, but he does say some insightful things. He's like you played a game, like, give me anything you want. I will figure out how it's racist and sexist and homophobic and transphobic. Like trees, baking soda, like, and like you can make anything you want. And so, and because you've got this power to destroy lives when someone says something racist or sexist, you can literally control who is allowed to exist in like the places of privilege and who isn't.
It's like playing 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
You know, can I connect this somehow to racism?
Yeah. And because, right, this capacity to destroy not just you, but like your friends and people you care about, like it invokes this like self-policing mechanism on everybody else. Like, oh, no, the language guide came out. Don't say this, or like, you'll take me out with you. And so it became this very strong social force, right? But then all of a sudden, because of Trump and because of this backlash, people who are willing to stand up and say, no, like, this is BS. Like, this is just a power grab, and I'm not going to let you tell me what to say. I'm not going to let you tell me what to do. I don't care what you call me. Call me every horrible name you want to. The people who stood up against that really were rewarded. Even if they're not always right, like it was like, hey, like, they stood up to the mob first. They stood up to the power structure first. And then that gave permission to other people. And I think that will be the change. And I think we're starting to see it. It doesn't take incredible bravery to stand up against it anymore. You had to be like suicidally brave to stand up to this, like in 2015, 2016.
Yeah. Well, you know, you talked about those people who stood up were rewarded. I think that was after a certain tipping point, because remember, there was a lot of casualties for people who stood up prior to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they headhunted. They really did go after people, and they claimed a lot of heads. They destroyed a lot of lives, but they didn't get everybody. This is true in war and in conflict and things like that. In the first generation of people who go to battle, there's a lot of casualties and a lot of people get knocked out. But then in the second generation, right, the people who've survived have gotten much better. People who've survived have figured out the game much more. And it gets much more difficult. Like, this is I have friends in the military, and this was like our story of Afghanistan and Iraq. At the first like wave of conflict, like it was idiots who didn't know what they were doing, blowing themselves up. But the second and third wave, like these people were like hardcore killers who knew the game inside and out of that technology and became a much more dangerous thing. And a similar thing happened in academia, right? Tons of people were driven out, tons of lives were destroyed, tons of damage was done, but they didn't get everybody. And the people who they didn't get figured out how to play the game better than the people who were coming after them. And where it's very cushy to sit there on high and be a DEI administrator and cast down sin and judgment, it's really hard to survive it being against that. But once they figured out how to do it, they started teaching other people, and then they started bringing people with them. So like Lee Justin is a great example. It's like he survived, I think, 3 major cancellation attacks where they called him every name in the book. Lee's been able to get like a whole bunch of us, like, you know, across the finish line in other areas. Sean Stevens at Fire, Nathan Honeycutt, Comey Frey. A lot of his people now have like taken academic positions and sort of, you know, set up like resistance camps like throughout academia.
Yeah. Resistance camps is a good descriptor.